It was a quiet morning in Asheville, North Carolina. The kind of morning where nothing extraordinary is expected. But inside one aging Victorian home, a retired canine dog named Ranger was about to uncover a truth buried for nearly a decade. You see, Ranger wasn't just any dog. He had served with the local police department for almost 10 years. A trained cadaver dog, sharp, disciplined, loyal. Now retired, he lived a peaceful life with 78-year-old Irene Douglas, a kind woman who had known too much grief and still had no idea how much more was buried inside her home. It started with a sound, the sharp, frantic scratching of Ranger's claws against an old, dusty armchair. Irene looked over, surprised. Ranger had never behaved this way before. He barked, scratched harder, his nose pressed against the fabric. There was something inside that chair, something that even Irene couldn't begin to imagine. The armchair was ordinary, faded floral print, torn at the corners. It had belonged to her brother Thomas, a man who vanished without a trace. 8 years ago, they had assumed he'd just left, angry after a family argument. Irene never moved the chair. She kept it for the memories. But that morning, Ranger was telling her something different. Worried, Irene called the police, not even sure how to explain what was happening. "My dog won't stop scratching this chair," she said. "He used to be a cadaver dog. I think he smells something." I remember the case. Thomas Douglas. 8 years, no leads. When I heard that dog was reacting, I had a feeling. So I went back to that house. Detective Harmon and a local officer arrived. They watched as Ranger barked louder, clawing at the armrest. Inside the stuffing, bones, fragments of teeth, a watch, still clinging to a decaying leather strap. Irene gasped. That's my brother's watch." The house was sealed off immediately. DNA results came back in 72 hours. The remains belonged to Thomas Douglas. It was no longer a missing person case. It was now a murder investigation. But how did his body end up inside an old chair? Detectives began digging. The armchair had been moved only once in the last 8 years, by Irene's other brother, Charles, a man who had passed away from a heart attack 2 years earlier. Charles had a temper, a criminal record, and he had stayed with Irene right after Thomas disappeared. The timeline was suspicious. So were the lies he told the police back then. The more they looked, the more things didn't add up. Then Irene found something in the basement, an old cigar box. Inside it, a yellowed envelope labeled, "Only open if they find him." I didn't mean to kill Thomas. He came at me during a fight. I pushed him. His head hit the table. I panicked. I was already on parole. I couldn't call the cops. I hid him for 2 days. Then I cut open the armchair. It was hollow. I wrapped him in plastic and stuffed him inside. I'm sorry. I really am. It was a confession. One filled with fear, guilt, and a desperate attempt to hide a terrible mistake. Charles had lived in that house for years, knowing exactly what was inside that chair, sitting across from it, sleeping near it, carrying a secret that would rot in silence until Ranger scratched it free. Ranger gave us what no human ever could. The truth. Ranger became a national hero overnight. News outlets across the country ran the headline, "Retired K9 solves cold case from the comfort of a living room." But to Irene, he was more than a hero. He was the reason her brother came home. The reason she could finally sleep without wondering. At Thomas's funeral, she placed Ranger's old police badge beside the American flag on the grave and whispered softly, "You brought him back to me." Sometimes justice doesn't come from courtrooms or investigations. Sometimes it comes on 4 legs, with a heart full of loyalty and a nose that never forgets. Ranger didn't need medals. He didn't need applause. All he needed was to do the job he was born to do. And this time, it brought a family closure and gave a brother the rest he had been waiting for 8 long years.